New questions tonight about whether the entire health care law is a redistribution scheme meant to take from some and give to others, contrary to the president's promises. In a rather eye-opening article now, even the New York Times, not to mention one of the president's top advisors, admits the answer is yes. Matt Bennett is co-founder of the left-leaning think tank group Third Way and a former Clinton White House deputy assistant. And Chris Plante is host of the Chris Plante radio show. This from the New York Times, November 23. The redistribution of wealth has always been a central feature of the law and lies at the heart of the insurance market disruptions driving political attacks this fall. They go on to quote one of the architects of the law. You cannot have a fair and fixed insurance market without some redistribution away from a small number of people. And the Times goes on to talk about how losers will be created with this law. Losers as well as winners. Matt, that's not exactly how this was built.
Well, no, it isn't. And I like John Harwood, I like the New York Times, but I don't agree with this. I think that they completely overrode it. Look, the fact is, anything government does essentially redistributes wealth from some people to other people. You don't get back dollar for dollar exactly what you put in taxes. And, of course, this does this also. The rich had to pay a little bit more so that the Medicaid expansion could happen. But
it goes well beyond that, though. Beyond the rich paying more.
No, not really.
Yes, it does. It does, and that's what the whole article is about. They mention in passing the fact that the rich are paying an extra 2% income tax. But we're talking about the premiums going up for everybody, these people losing plans and now having to pay more so that they can fund the plans that the newly insured are getting, none of which was explicitly disclosed by this president.
That wasn't the purpose of them paying more. They're paying more so that they get better insurance. The fact is
that they don't want or need. And the reason they needed to make them do that, Matt, is because they needed their money.
No, they needed them in the exchanges, but they needed everyone to have better insurance, because if you have catastrophic care coverage and you don't have coverage for normal things, you end up in the emergency room, everyone pays for that.
So, I mean, I don't know what kind of world we're in, Chris, where the New York Times and David Axelrod, who is quoted in this article as talking about how, look, he's lamenting the fact that in this country we've created a sense that everyone can expect to win and no one has to sacrifice. But that's not reality, he talks about. And the New York Times is calling this redistribution.
Well, it's nice that now that all other options have been exhausted, they've been forced into a corner and they're forced to tell the truth. Thanks to John Harwood and David Axelrod for finally saying out loud what they've known all along, what a lot of us have been saying all along, has been the truth. And this was sold on a lie. We were sold a bill of goods. It wouldn't have passed if this is the way that it had been presented to the American people. And President Obama likely would not have been reelected to a second term if this is the way it had been sold to the American people. Of course, it's redistributional in its essence. And you know, you can dismiss it and say, well, all government activity is redistributionist. But this this was sold as something that it is not.
Matt, they are talking in this law, and we've seen this so far about how, in this article, we've seen this so far about how this law is creating losers as well as winners. And you heard that from Joe Trippi, a fair broker of information. Losers as well as winners. That is not how this was sold. And the American people were told that everyone could magically be winners under this law.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think that there's some fairness to that, Megan. But the fact is that almost every law creates losers as well as winners. If you raise taxes on someone, they are a loser.
Really?
Say that.
Yes,
Say that and have an honest debate about who's likely to be a loser. Now what's happening, Chris, is the losers, so-called losers, are people who have serious health problems who just lost their policies and now are spending hours a day on healthcare.gov, which doesn't work.
Well, and it's, you know, to paraphrase Bill Clinton, it depends on what the meaning of the word loser is, because even those of us who are who are being allowed by the federal government to keep our plans are paying much, much more. Most of us, in the end, 2 years from now, will have lost our plans and be forced to sign up for something that we don't want. Look, I don't need boat insurance or motorcycle insurance. Well, of course it is.
All right,
no,
guys.
of course it isn't, Chris.
Look at the AEI study.
Go, just as it's heating up. But I do got to go because about 100 million people could be affected by these storms. We want to get that story in.